Spicy funeral stories? Yeah, I have a few. Stay tuned.
Are you ready for true tales from a real undertaker? Everything from strange situations to crazy paranormal experiences. For over 20 years, Mark Tofson was a funeral director and embalmer working everywhere from California to Japan. Get set to hear about his hauntingly crazy adventures.
Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Mark. I'm a retired funeral director. I come to you almost every week and try to tell you some stories about my experiences in the funeral business. Today, I am going to talk about some spicy stories that happened, and the only reason I'm using the word spicy is because YouTube will not allow you to use the other S word. Uh, Now, for the most part, funeral directors are pretty perverted. So there's quite a few stories I heard, but I will talk to you about a couple of them that I personally have dealt with. Um, Now, I'm going to lead into this a little bit before I get to the first story. Uh, a lot of the funeral suppliers who supply things like embalming fluid, caskets, things like that, they give their salespeople quite a big amount of money to take funeral directors out and kind of spoil them so they will buy their product. Um, so yeah, a lot of times, we'd have a guy come in, especially the fluid salesman. These guys would come in and they'd say, "Hey, I'm going to take you all out to dinner, and then afterwards take you out for drinks." Well, most of the funeral directors are like, "Yeah, take us to a strip club." Well, that really wasn't my thing. I dated two strippers. First one I didn't know was a stripper when I started dating her. I found out later. Second one, I actually met on one of these outings when I went, and she was just too beautiful to say no to. But I did find out that both of them had, screws loose. So that's what ended that. Um, Now, the funny thing is, when I was working in Arizona, they have a ruling there where I don't know if it's still good or not, but you used to be able to be an apprentice forever. You never had to take any classes or anything. You just couldn't sign any paperwork or anything like that. Uh, and as far as directing funerals, you could call yourself a funeral arranger, do everything a funeral director does except for sign the papers. Of course, you don't get paid as much, but some people do real well. The one guy I worked with, he was a kiss ass. So he was kissing everybody's ass, and they made him actually a manager of a location, which I don't think legally at the time they could have done, but I think they may have put it under somebody else's name. Well, this guy was a smart ass. So one time when these salesmen came around, said, "Hey, I'm taking you out. All funeral directors is what." So he put out a notice saying all funeral directors, are welcome to come to this outing, dinner, drinks. Um, I really didn't want to go, but I thought, well, if I'm not busy, maybe I will. At least the dinner part. Um, I asked the guy, sent him a message asking him, and he did it real funny in front of a bunch of people. He actually he said it in front of a bunch of people. I remember now. We were in the back, and he mentioned it, and I said, "Well, what time is it?" And he said, "Well, this is for funeral directors only." And I guess he thought I wasn't a funeral director because I was in the embalming room all the time embalming. Well, I had a funeral director's license and he didn't. So, needless to say, I brought up the fact that, okay, I have a funeral director's license. Where's yours? I guess you're not going. That really pissed him off. But anyhow, we ended up going out, and I just went because I felt like after that I needed to go. I didn't really want to go, but I ended up attending. Anyways, there was this one casket company that was very well known. They still are today. They're probably the biggest sales in caskets in maybe in the world, at least in the U.S. they are. Um, but when I started, I mean, this goes back probably to the 50s or 60s, but when I started in the 80s, I was hearing stories about how they would take funeral directors to their private ranch located in the Midwest, and apparently they would come and get you in a private plane and get a bunch of people from the same town, same area, take them up there. They would spend, 4 days up there. It was nothing but eating, drinking, partying. They'd brought in prostitutes. Um, you know, you, everybody heard about it, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, I wish I could go." Uh, Needless to say, as the funeral business started to get more women, uh, these kind of things stopped being so popular. I never understood why they were popular, especially back in the 80s when AIDS was really catching on big. But yeah, I remember they used to use that as an incentive was, hey, you sell our stuff, we might get to go to the ranch. Uh, the second story is about actually a stripper. Uh, she had cancer. She passed away very quickly. So she didn't really have any chemo or anything. So it didn't really, she didn't lose weight or anything. She looked pretty much normal. Um, she demanded that she be buried in a see through negligee. Well, my boss was freaking out. Oh, we can't do that. We can't. And I reminded him that unless it's something illegal, we're supposed to comply with what they want as much as we can. And to add to that, there was a bunch of angry bikers that were there making the arrangements. So he decided real quick that it was in his best interest that he did this. Um, so yeah, we embalmed her. I made sure that I did the incision in a very discreet place where you couldn't see it. Um, I put her in her clothes, a negligee, stockings, a whole bit, and put her in the casket. And she looked beautiful. So she looked wonderful. Uh, Everybody was very pleased, and my boss was freaking out the whole time. He just didn't know what to think or say because he was trying to play on his religious part. But like I said, the rules are is basically unless you're doing something illegal, uh, you're supposed to comply with their wishes. Uh, I've complied with other wishes that were probably illegal, like I've let people put marijuana and things in the casket with the person to take with them, but I just figure that's none of my business. Um, the third story was when I was working at the funeral home in California. I was an apprentice, and I told you about the other older lady in the paranormal episode that worked with me. Well, she kind of looked, like I was her grandson or something. So she was real protective of me. So one night, she was in the back embalming or finishing an embalming, and this real nice looking lady in a very short miniskirt comes in. Very, very sexy looking, nice lady. I don't know if I'm supposed to use that S word, spicy, spicy, I guess. Anyways, she comes in. She says she wants to look at a casket. Well, this is kind of late at night, 8 or 9 at night, and my boss said, anytime anybody wants to look, let them look. Okay. So I took her in. I showed her around. I explained the differences and things, and she started doing all these kind of seductive moves on the caskets and things, and I knew what she was up to. And I was young at the time. I was still, early 20s, and it was driving me crazy because she was really good looking. Well, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in the back, the corner of my eye, I could see in back of her that lady come walking in here, and oh my gosh, that older lady was so mad. She came in there, started yelling at her, "Get out of here! I know what you're up to. You get out of here. This is disgusting. Get out!" And chased her out. And so I had to laugh, and she said, "Did you know what she was up to?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "If you didn't butt in, she would have gotten it too." So she was really mad at me after that for a while. She's saying, "You can't do that. You're a young man. You got to act like a young man." And And you got to be distinguished. Well, yeah, I'm a man too. But, so these are just a couple of the spicier ones. There's some other ones involving spicy things that I'll get into later. There's one really big one about a lawsuit that I was a witness for. Uh, that kind of changed my whole outlook on the funeral business, but I will get into that later. I thank you for watching, and I hope you'll come back next week, and I'll have a new story for you. Right now, I'm trying to put together one about how 6 Feet Under tied into people at my embalming college. I'm still kind of going over the old episodes because I kind of remember them, but forgotten a lot. It's been a long time. But yeah, I used to freak my ex-wife out when I would tell her how the story would turn out before it was even over because I knew the story from school. But I'd like you to share this if you can, and give me a like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll get to see you again next week. Thanks again. Bye.
Please like, share, and subscribe.